I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Palestinian president says he's willing to negotiate peace based on the 1967 borders. Israel is shocked by a series of threats by the president of Turkey, and German and Israeli doctors partner up to perform an astonishing heart surgery. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Further details are now emerging on the closed-door discussions between Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House on May 4th. Former top PA negotiator Nabil Shaath says the meeting was far more successful than anticipated. He describes the American leader as having listened attentively when Abbas said he wanted to reopen peace negotiations with Israel based on the 2007 to 2008 Annapolis conference with former Israeli Prime Minister Olmert had purposed land swaps amounting to 6.3% of the West Bank, but Palestinians were only willing to accept 1.9% of those swaps in order to ensure that they would retain part of East Jerusalem as their future capital. The PA boss reportedly said there's no way that he'll accept the positions set out by current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but that it won't take much bargaining to close the Olmert-era gap. Consensus on the critical border issue, the Palestinians say, would impact the remaining core topics and pave the path to a permanent agreement. Nevertheless, Abbas still says he won't accept anything less than a Palestinian state along the 1967 lines with East Jerusalem as its capital. As far as Trump's admonition against PA payments to terrorists who attack Israelis, Shaath claims the matter is a precondition raised by Israel that should be left for final status talks. Trump says he's anxious to reach the ultimate deal by achieving a Mideast peace accord and will work toward that when he visits both later this month. Joining me in the studio today is Zalman Koval, former Israeli ambassador to the United States and retired Knesset member. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much.
So let's begin. In the last few weeks, we've been hearing talk from senior administration officials that President Trump is in fact planning on moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. How will this affect Trump's renewed peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, we don't know if he's going to go ahead in doing it. There are conflicting messages, from that point of view. The Palestinians try to show this as if this would completely destroy the chances of peace and create a horrible sort of catastrophe in the Arab world and so on and so forth. That's not quite true, by the way. I don't know what the decision will be, but let's not forget the American embassy will be moved, if it will be moved, to West Jerusalem. West Jerusalem has absolutely no connotation, no meaning at all for the Muslim religion, nothing at all.
But is that how it's going to be perceived by the Arab world? No, I mean, how will that affect Israeli-American?
It depends really on Arab leadership as well. But it's purely a political thing. It's not a religious thing. West Jerusalem was created 166 years ago, has nothing to do with Muslim religion or the Temple Mount or anything like that. So it's a political thing, and it's a red herring, basically, and that's the way the Palestinians, unfortunately, have been acting all along the so-called peace process. But I don't know what the American...
Is it in Israel's best interest for that to happen, do you believe?
Look, it's important. It's Israel's capital, not only the Jewish people's capital, it's Israel's capital. And it's also fairly ridiculous because, in fact, everybody recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. All American presidents who have come here went to Jerusalem, speaking in the Knesset. All diplomatic negotiations are happening in Jerusalem. I mean, no Israeli minister goes down to the American embassy in Tel Aviv. The American ambassador goes up to Jerusalem. So it would just give the stamp of reality to something which is happening anyway. The Palestinians' refusal to accept that is part of their refusal to accept the Jewish people's right to a state of their own and, of course, a capital of their own.
Now, let's turn to another topic. David Friedman, he has just been appointed America's chief envoy to Israel, despite the fact that the largest American Jewish community, the Union for Reform Judaism, has strongly condemned his nomination. How important is it for the ambassador to have a strong relationship with the American Jewish population?
It's very important. And, you know, Ambassador Friedman's going to arrive here in a few days, actually, less than a week, I think. I wasn't happy about the, you know, the Reformed community's attitude. They should not protest against a Jewish nominee for the post of ambassador to Israel. I think it was a mistake, even though they have differences of opinion, legitimate differences of opinion. But we must remember, whether it's an Israeli ambassador or an American ambassador, he will have to fulfill the policy made by the president, not his own policy. And we'll have to wait and see exactly what the guidelines coming from Washington to Mr. Friedman will be. I certainly welcome him, and I'm probably going to meet him very soon after he arrives.
Now, as an ambassador yourself, how important is it to have actual diplomatic experience in this role?
Well, you know, I was not a professional ambassador. I was a politician, but I had dealt with diplomatic matters most of my life, also in the Knesset, I would say. If a person is a diplomat by nature, then he can learn the, you know, the professional aspects of that pretty soon. But he must remember, I represent my country. I do not represent my own views. And if he's talented in doing that, and I think Mr. Friedman is a very talented lawyer, which is also very helpful, I'm sure he's going to do a good job in this country. He's certainly welcome.
In the past, Friedman has referred to liberal Jews as capos. What is your response to that?
Nothing in the world should ever be compared to anything to do with the Holocaust or the Nazis or people who served the Nazis. I don't know if he actually referred to liberal Jews. I mean, we are all liberal Jews, even if we are Orthodox. So we are liberal as Jews. But he probably referred to some people, but even that is not helpful.
Now, let's talk about the settlements a little bit, especially in regard to Friedman. He is a well-known supporter of the West Bank settlement of Beit El. Does his support of Israeli settlements in any way contradict American foreign policy in regard to settlements?
American foreign policy officially does not brand settlements as illegal, contrary to the Europeans and contrary to the Arabs. They say it's an obstacle to peace. Okay. That can be, you know, discussed and debated and so on and so forth. But the fact is, in the last 20 years, and all along the Netanyahu administration, not one single new settlement was created. Existing settlements were broadened, widened, and so on and so on, but no new settlements. We all know that the Israeli position, whether it was a Likud government or a Labour government or a national unity government, is that settlements fulfill, some settlements, not all of them, fulfill a vital role in Israel's security. And right after the Six-Day War, for instance, Moshe Dayan said, we have to build something what is now Gilo. And there's a reason for that. Jerusalem was completely surrounded by Arab Palestinian territory. It could be cut off in a second. And therefore, there was a decision by the national unity government to build settlements in the neighborhood of Jerusalem. There are other motivations as well, ideological and religious ones. But the main fact is that settlements are not an obstacle to peace either, because once there will be real negotiations, meaningful negotiations, which the Palestinians have refused for 70 years actually to hold with us, or even before that. They don't want to have real negotiations because they understand in any real peace process, both sides have to make compromises, which they don't want to do. Settlements, again, is a red herring. Once they sit down to negotiate with us, that issue can be settled in a meaningful and, I think, positive way.
Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
A viral campaign to help Syrians in need is spreading across university campuses, and ILTV has an inside look at who's behind it.
I'm NYU, and I support Syrians with the Save Syrians campaign.
I go to Maynooth University, and I'm supporting the Save Syrians campaign.
I study at the University of the Witwatersrand, and I support the Save Syria campaign.
From Ireland to South Africa to the United States, thousands of students are gathering on college campuses across the world to stand up for Syrians in need. But here's what you wouldn't expect. The entire movement is being organized by pro-Israel student organizations, even though Syria has long been one of Israel's greatest enemies.
we're all human, and maybe we have fought in the past, but holding a grudge does no good.
Pro-Israel students have joined to launch SaveSyrians.com, a website dedicated to raising awareness and money for the victims of the 6-year Syrian civil war. And they're calling on everybody they can to provide support.
This isn't an Israel problem, this isn't a Syrian problem, this is not a Middle Eastern problem, this is a humanitarian problem. And this is something that affects all of us, regardless of our past, our race, our ethnicity. This is something that is involving humanity, and we should do everything we can to help it.
470,000 people have been murdered in Syria over the course of the 6-year Syrian civil war, which has been raging just over Israel's border. Every day, the Israeli army picks up injured Syrians and transports them into Israel for further help. Over 5,000 Syrians have received medical treatment in Israel, and over 800 of them have been treated in this very hospital.
Sometimes people ask me, who are these people? And I say, well, actually, I don't know. I see a human being who needs my help, and that's what I do.
سكن لا، بس إن معاملة إنسانية أفضل من كثير دول. نحن مناطق حدودية أغلقت حدود. لبنان، أردن، كله سكر حدود.
Despite the extensive humanitarian aid that Israel is providing to Syrians in need, many students on college campuses are not aware of it. But the Save Syrians campaign seems to be changing that. At the University of Santa Barbara, the Student Supporting Israel organization says their events to show solidarity with Syria are transforming perspectives.
I just heard about Israel helping out Syria and giving aid, and how I hadn't seen that anywhere in the news.
I would not expect it, actually.
I know that with their history and their religious conflict and territorial conflict, so that is pretty surprising that Israel's giving aid to Syria. It does help change my mind.
The Jewish agency Israel Fellows to Hillel, Stand With Us, Students Supporting Israel, CAMRA, the South Africa Union of Jewish Students, and API, these are only some of the pro-Israel groups pushing forward the Save Syrian campaign, a movement that clearly should have no borders or divides. All right, Turkey and Israel reinstated diplomatic ties just last year, but you'd never know it if you listen to the latest batch of insults and threats towards Israel coming from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The hardline leader used the opening ceremony of an international Islamic forum to blast Israel in a show of solidarity with the Palestinians. While rejecting Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem, Erdogan said that, quote, every day that the city is occupied is an insult to Muslims. He then called for a flood of Muslim visits to the Temple Mount to stop Jerusalem from being Judaized. The Turkish president is branding Israeli policies as racist and discriminatory and is blasting a proposal to limit the volume of Muslim pre-dawn calls to prayer. Israeli leaders are infuriated by the remarks. The Speaker of the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein, says that unfortunately, despite the reconciliation between Israel and Turkey, Erdogan remains an enemy of the Jewish state. The Foreign Ministry has issued a statement denouncing the Turkish allegations as baseless slander and is telling Erdogan that anyone who systematically violates human rights in his own country shouldn't preach about morality to the only democracy in the region. As the clock ticks down to tomorrow's FIFA Congress in Bahrain, Israel's doing all it possibly can to head off the latest Palestinian effort to kick the Jewish state out of the International Soccer League. The Israeli delegation is already on the ground in Manama to rally support, and following a telephone conversation between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and FIFA President Gianni Infantino on Friday, Jerusalem has already come up with its own proposal to resolve the dispute. Since 2015, the Palestinians have been claiming that 6 Israeli teams based in the West Bank violate FIFA rules by playing on another member's territory. One Israeli official involved in the negotiation says FIFA's president understands that any change in the status quo would damage the league. The Israelis have been trying to keep the matter from coming up for discussion at all, but if it does, they're hoping the new proposal will stave off any potential suspension. The new plan is said to provide a practical solution that wouldn't involve FIFA recognition of the Palestinians' diplomatic claims and keep politics out of sports. Very interesting. All right, in other positive cross-border news, German and Israeli doctors have recently joined forces to perform heart surgery on an Iraqi Kurdish boy. ILTV's Aaron Porce is still with me in the studio to cover this. This sounds incredible. Tell us about it.
Thank you, Natasha. 11-year-old Marwan Ghazi Ali is currently recovering from heart surgery, which involved the installation of an artificial heart valve made from the jugular vein of a cow that was then inserted and placed in Marwan's pulmonary artery. So I'll fill in the rest with my report. The surgery was conducted by German doctor Stefan Schubert and his Israeli colleague Sagi Asa at the Wolfson Medical Center in Holon. Despite the fact that the two physicians are experts in heart surgery, Dr. Asa described the procedure as one of the most complicated and most dangerous that he's performed. However, despite the risks, doctors are saying that Marwan's surgery was a complete success and that after a few days of bed rest, he should be back on his feet. The surgery was made possible by the Israeli charity Save a Child's Heart, which has provided cardiac care to over 4,000 children from 50 countries, with close to 50% of their patients being Palestinian. The charity is supported by a combination of private donations and funding from the Israeli government.
Top Israeli leaders were in the United States this weekend to attend the annual Jerusalem Post conference held in New York City. ILTV sent our very own correspondent Rob Jacobson to check it out and report back.
It's the 6th year the Jerusalem Post is organizing a conference in New York, essentially giving a stage for Israeli politicians to come and say whatever they want to the American people, unfiltered.
Backstage, it looks like Israeli politicians have a more positive outlook about the future of Israeli-American relations, especially given U.S. President Donald Trump's upcoming visit to the State of Israel.
We are very excited from the cooperation with the new administration. I think the bond between Israel and the United States is very strong.
Donald Trump is a real friend of Israel, of the State of Israel. I think he has his heart in the right place, and he will be warmly welcomed in Israel.
Former Israeli Chief of Staff Dan Chalutz claims Donald Trump's history as a businessman will likely help his approach in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
I'm very supportive of this initiative of President Trump to have a deal. And business people, when they are saying we should have a deal, in the end of the day they are reaching a deal.
One of the major issues in the conference was if Israel will still be able to remain the state of all Jews, with the growing divide between American Jewry, the Jewish diaspora, and Israel.
I don't think that North American Jews, which live in a very open and free society, look at Israel from that standpoint, that that's our life insurance policy. They look at Israel as being, yes, it's to have a home of Israel and to have it there for us as a possibility down the road is a maybe.
This is an extremely important moment in terms of the evolution of Israel's relations with the Jewish diaspora. We're seeing new voices coming out of Israel, the understanding that a vibrant diaspora is almost a Zionist imperative, and therefore Israel needs to rethink its relationship with the Jewish diaspora. That thinking that began outside of government is increasingly embraced in government.
The organizers were very pleased with the wide attendance at this year's event, and although no big headlines came out at the conference, it was still important that the message was heard in public loud and clear. Reporting from the J-Post conference, for ILTV, I'm Ron Jacobson, New York.
Switching topics now, joining me in the studio is Mirna Herzog, a world-renowned Brazilian-Israeli conductor and viola da gamba performer. Mirna actually was a founder and director of Brazil's first Baroque orchestra, Academia Antigua Pro Parte, until she immigrated to Israel to start Israel's very own multifaceted musical ensemble, which specializes in early music. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So I'm excited to hear a little bit about viola da gamba. Tell us about this.
The viola da gamba is in fact a bowed guitar. Actually, you can see it there. I'm playing. You can see a long neck with frets, and the tuning is very similar to the guitar. The strings, instead of being tuned in fifths like the violin or the cello, they are tuned in fourths with a third in the middle. And that enables one to play lots of chords. And this instrument was born in the Iberic Peninsula. And it came to the rest of Europe with the Jews, which were expelled in 1492, and brought to Italy this instrument. And the first ensembles in Italy all were Jewish, The players were Jewish, had Jewish names. And from there it spreads to the rest of Europe. It's an instrument.
So is that what first attracted you to this instrument, the unique history behind it?
No, actually, I always say I didn't choose the instrument, it chose me. When I first heard it played, I was already starting to play because people said, "Whoa, you're playing early music, you should play the gamba." They got me a gamba, I started, but I didn't know what it's possible to do. Then I went to a workshop in the States and I saw a person, Judy Davidoff, that I have the honor to be my friend until this very day. She's now 88 or 89. Yeah. And when I saw her playing, I said, that's what I want to play.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Phoenix Orchestra and what makes it so unique.
The fact is, I think we're the only ensemble in this country that plays from Middle Ages to classic early Romantic period.
Wow.
But each phase we play with a different set of instruments. So, for instance, we did the medieval opera, the play of Daniel. So I played the vielle, which is a medieval string instrument, and everyone played medieval instruments. And when we play Renaissance, it with Renaissance, Baroque, and now the big novelty we're playing, we became an orchestra. Many of my colleagues who have been playing Baroque instruments shifted to classical instruments, which are still different from the ones you're used to hear playing in the symphonic orchestras. They have a very unique sound, so we are doing a program of early 19th century music with classical instruments, and this gives a unique taste.
Now, I understand that you're going to be performing this year at the Abu Ghosh Vocal Musical Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, the festival in itself is fabulous. I love the festival, and I'm happy that my concert is at 11:30 in the morning on the 3rd of June, because then I can stay the whole day there and drink wine, eat a little bit, see all. There's lots of music outside. It's a wonderful vicinity, and there are lots of concerts. So all the concerts are always interesting because Hannah Tzur, who is the musical director of the festival, she's a very imaginative and creative person. I have a long association with the festival. I have to say, in fact, that for many years, I was musical director.
Well, let me tell you, I myself would love to go and see you perform in this festival, so I'm going to be headed there myself. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Physicists working on the creation of the Middle East's new particle accelerator are now preparing to open the doors of their new institute in Jordan on May 16th. The event is particularly remarkable because Israeli scientists are working closely on the initiative with their colleagues from Pakistan and Iran. Neither of the Muslim countries recognize a Jewish state, but that's not keeping the team from making great strides in producing synchrotron lights for experimental science and applications called SeSAMI for short. Egypt and Jordan are also involved in the $100 million project, but that's not as noteworthy since they have both signed peace accords with Israel. Other regional participants include Turkey, Cyprus, Bahrain, and the Palestinian Authority. Turkey doesn't recognize Cyprus politically either, however, which adds further interest in the project site, which is located just a little northwest of Amman, Jordan. Synchrotron light sources are utilized for research ranging from the medical to engineering fields. SeSAMI's beams will be dedicated to analyzing regional problems such as pollution in the Jordan Valley. One Israeli theoretical physicist says science is a natural way to build bridges between cultures and nations. He says that after decades of conflict, this successful collaboration between Jews and Muslims may symbolize the light at the end of the tunnel.
The Hebrew Word of the Day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. One of the greatest spices of life is in experimentation. It's through trying new things that all major breakthroughs, inventions, and innovations have been born. So today's word is lenasot, meaning to try. There are an unlimited number of things that are shaveh lenasot, or worth trying. Lenasot lirkod, or trying to dance, for example, is a great way to let off steam. Now, if dancing isn't quite your style, though, you could give cooking a nisayon, or a try. In the end, though, it's not so important what you choose to experiment with, or even if your nisayonot or experiments are successful. It's just important that you're trying, because the greatest failures in life are the failures to lenasot. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 71 or 22 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is expected to stay warm, but temperatures along the coast are set to drop to a high of around 94 or 34 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.6 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.